is Hjcajina. I'm a senior athletic training student. Today I will be performing a cranial nerve assessment. So let's get started with olfactory nerve. So I'm going to have him smell something familiar. So this is coffee. So pinch one nostril for me. Sniff, pinch the other. Sniff. Inability to smell anything familiar is indicative of olfactory nerve lesion. Second test is optic nerve. So that's used for seeing. So I'd have him read a scoreboard, a billboard, anything I can have him read. That works. I can also write down any letter and have him read at varying lengths. So what is this?
H.
Then I back up.
H.
What is this?
H.
And keep backing up, and his optic nerve checks okay. I can also shine a pen light to see if there is constriction bilaterally blocking the other eye. So like so. So if there's not constriction bilaterally, that's also indicative of optic nerve lesion. Next is the ocular motor. So same thing, I'm going to shine a pen light, but with this, I'm looking to see if there is constriction on one side and not the other. So that is indicative of an ocular motor nerve lesion. Another test for ocular motor nerve lesion would be just following my finger, having him follow my finger with his eyes, and inability to follow my finger is associated with the muscles in the eye. To specifically target the fourth cranial nerve, that is trochlear. So that muscle the muscle that that nerve innervates is basically it has the eyes look inward. So just cross your eyes for me and look towards your nose. Inability to do that is associated with trochlear nerve lesion. And we're skipping to the sixth nerve, the abducens. Inability to look to left or right or laterally. Look, follow my finger. Follow it. Inability to look to the sides is indicative of lesion of the abducens. The fifth, going back to the fifth cranial nerve, the trigeminal nerve, it innervates sensory function for the maxilla and mandible, and it also is a mastication muscle. So if they cannot feel anything here, that's indicative of a lesion. And if I ask him to bite down and clamp, if the patient cannot do that, that is indicative of a lesion as well. Or if I check bilaterally while he clamps and there's unequal tension, then that there's indicative of trigeminal nerve lesion. So on to cranial nerve number 7. Basically, this is intrinsic muscles of the face. So just smile for me and then frown for me. So inability to do that is indicative of a facial or cranial nerve number 7 lesion. Cranial nerve number 8 is the vestibular cochlear nerve, and with this I'm gonna have any just to see if you can hear. So first we'll start with hearing. So I'll rub my fingers or snap, and then rub my fingers or snap, and that is indicative of the hearing portion of the vestibular cochlear nerve. And then to test the vestibular system, I'd have him stand, close your eyes, and then march. Okay, that's fine. So inability to march while having your eyes closed, or inability to hear, is associated with vestibular cochlear damage. It's for hearing and sense of balance. So on to the next one, which is cranial nerve number 9, which is the glossopharyngeal. So with this, it innervates the swallowing muscles. So I'm going to have him swallow and look for visible swallowing effect. And then I'll have him open his mouth, and I'll just stick my tongue depressor back there and see if there's a gag reflexes. I'm not going to do it on him because that's uncomfortable. So testing the gag reflex. Inability to swallow or inability to see a gag reflex is indicative of a glossopharyngeal nerve lesion. Next is cranial nerve number 10. It is the vagus nerve. So with this one, I could just see if there's a pulse, a radial pulse, or if it's diminished or absent. That could be indicative of vital functions that are innervated by the vagus nerve. And with this, I could also see it also innervates the vocal cords. So diminished voice or coarseness of the voice. I could have him open his mouth and say ah,
Ah.
and then check for the uvula, and if it deviates or it is not functioning correctly, it will deviate to one side or the other, and that's indicative of a nerve lesion. And if there's roughness in his voice, it could be indicative of a vagus nerve lesion. So next is cranial nerve number 11, so the accessory nerve. So it innervates the trapezius. So I can just have him shrug his shoulders for me. And if there's, if you cannot shrug your shoulders, or if there's weakness in the shrugging of his shoulders, so shrug your shoulders like this, then that's indicative of that sort of lesion. And then the last nerve is the hypoglossal, and that is intrinsic muscles of the tongue, the motor, innervation of the motor for the tongue. So I can have him stick his tongue out and just move it around. And if the patient cannot do that, that is indicative of a hypoglossal